In today's episode in our Learn With Me series, we will be learning about flat-sided embroidery needles. We will be going over 4 types of flat needles. The first of the flat needles we will be talking about is universal needles. They are your basic set of needles. They are universal because they are both great for sewing and embroidery. It is a great needle to have on hand, especially if you do both. The needles we have laid out are our most popular needles. However, the Organ Needle brand is transitioning into just the 5-pack, which also has new packaging. When you order 100 needles, you will receive either a 10 of the 10-pack or you will receive 20 of the 5-pack. So at the top here, we have our sharp needles, also called your standardized needle or standard needles. The bottom row is our ballpoint needles. When it comes to organ needles, they identify the ballpoint, as you can see here, with SUK/BP. BP stands for ballpoint. So if it's a ballpoint, they will clarify on the label. With the lack of code, which you see on the top row, means it is your sharp needle, or also known as a standard needle. Sharp needles are used for your tightly woven garments, and ballpoints are used for your knits and lightly woven fabrics. If you use a sharp needle on your knit, you might see a run go across your fabric, and that is because you are cutting your fabric with a sharp needle. So making sure you used the correct needle for the type of fabric you are using is very important. We have a nice array of sizes going down to a 60/8 and up to the 18/110. Typically in embroidery, you go from 60 up to 16. You certainly will be bringing in that 18 if you are sewing on some heavy-duty fabrics. Again, this is a review of our universal needles, both the standard and the ballpoint needles. Next, we will be talking about titanium needles. This is a specialty needle you do not usually use a thick thread or a super thin thread for. However, we do offer the 70-10 all the way up to the 90-14, and those combinations of those two numbers will never change. They are always going to be the same number with the same number. We have the sharp needles on the top row because there is no BP code listed, and they all have PD, however, which stands for perfect durability. On the bottom row, you have the BP next to the PD, which are the ballpoint titanium organ needles. Again, we have our standard or sharp needle at the top and the ballpoint at the bottom. These do come in a nice pack of 10, so it's a total of 100 needles. Titanium is a strong metal, so it gives you a little more strength when sewing. There can be a bit of bouncing up and down on the round cap frames. Because of this, needles are more prone to deflecting to the side and not going in the needle plate hole. This can be a cause of the needle breaking. For flat embroidery, however, the titanium is going to last a little bit longer. We recommend a standard or sharp needle regular, such as the 7511, if you are using your 40 weight. You can use your 7511s to go thinner to get a little bit more detail in your design, especially the thinner threads, or you can go higher if you are using a thicker specialty threads. For sewing, it is typically the same, but if you need a little more strength to create the seams, so a heavier fabric means a thicker needle. Here is another titanium or PD perfect durability needles, but these needles are actually heavy duty. To indicate that this is a heavy duty needle, it will indicate a code on the box that will say HLX5, and this code means that it can sew through multiple layers of fabric like quilting, jeans, applique, or heavy embroidery. If you prefer using titanium needles and are embroidering hats, these are the needles we recommend. But you can also use a standard needle as long as it is hooped correctly. You can use the 7511, the sharp, in the top row. Again, as mentioned previously, these are organ needles, which means the PD is on both, meaning titanium. But that BP stands for ballpoint in the bottom row. In the top row, where there is no BP indicated, means it's a standard point. Titanium has a little bit more durability in the blade and generally lasts a little bit longer. These would be best on heavy fabrics. Next, we will be talking about needles for your stretchy materials. They have a code SP labeled on these needles as well. Turning these up, you can see the markings on the box, which are organ needles. As mentioned, the SP is labeled on all four and BP next to the number is your standard needles. And the bottom row is your ballpoint. Again, these BP or ballpoint needles are for stretchy fabrics such as your performance wear, t-shirts, and lycra, which is your bathing suits. Moving on to a different batch of needles, we have a top stitch, microtex, and titanium needles. We first have the 80-12, the 14 needles, which are the top stitch embroidery or sewing needles. Next, we have the microtext, which is equivalent to the stretchy fabric needles we went over in the previous video. Lastly, you have an assortment of titanium needles, the 70-11, 80-12, and the 90-14, which is great for both embroidery and sewing. These needles are only available in the 5-pack and are economically priced if you don't need a lot of needles. Again, this is a great choice if you want an affordable option and if you do not need a lot of needles. Last, we have an assortment that includes the majority of the needles we talked about today. There might be a few we did not mention, however, we will have a chart that will list all that is in the assortment box. This includes 100 assorted needles, but you are going to get 10 of 10 different kind of needles. As you can see, we have the needles we mentioned. If it is in the new packaging, you will get 2 packs of 5 needles in the assortment box. It is a great way to get started and to have on hand whenever you need a certain type of needle. Once you figure out if you need a certain type of needle, you can order that specific type of needle separately. The box has a nice handy cover, which is also a very secure box that can hold all the needles. It also comes with a sheet that is a needle identifier. It talks about all the different codes that we explained previously and what they mean. On the back is some suggestions on what you are going to need the needles for and what they are best for. This is not a list of everything that is in the assortment box. It is more of a generic chart for the organ needles and what's in the box and some other needles that you can order separately as well. Again, this is a great starter pack, especially if you are a beginner. Thank you for joining me in today's Learn With Me episode. Feel free to check out our other episodes in our Learn With Me series and our other educational resources on allstitch.com.
All Stitch, all the supplies, all the savings, every day.